Welcome back to the RADIX Intro series. In video 1, we laid the foundation, the difference between transits and timing techniques. The weather in the season. If you haven't watched that one yet, go back and start there. Everything in this series builds on what came before. In that video, I introduced 2 timing techniques by name, annual profections and Firdaria. I told you we'd go deep on each one. This is where we go deep on annual profections. By the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly how the profection cycle works, what a Lord of the Year is, and why it matters so much, and how to look back at your own life and see this pattern operating probably in ways that will make you go, okay, that actually explains a lot. Let's get into it. Video 2, annual profections. And I want to start this one not with a definition, but with something you've almost certainly experienced, even if you've never had a name for it. Think about the years of your life. Not all of them at once, just some of the ones that stand out. There's probably a year that was entirely about relationships. Everything circled back to it. A partnership that formed, one that ended, a conflict that defined things. Whatever else was happening, relationships were the main event. Yeah, there was probably a year dominated by career or public life. A year when your professional situation demanded everything. A year when your reputation was on the line, or something broke open, or something finally landed. Maybe a year when money was the only thing that seemed to matter in either direction. Or a year when health took over. Or a year that felt strangely internal, like you were pulling away from your regular life and doing some kind of underground work you couldn't quite explain. You weren't imagining any of that. Traditional astrologers have had a name for this pattern for over 2,000 years. It's called annual profections. And once you understand how it works, you can look at every year of your life, past and future, and see the structure underneath it. Here's how annual profections work. The principle is beautifully simple. Your natal chart has 12 houses. Each house represents a distinct area of life, identity, money, communication, home, creativity, health, relationships, transformation, belief, career, community, and hidden matters. Beginning from your ascendant, the first house, one house advances, or profects, each year on your birthday. You spend your first year of life in a first house profection. Your second year in a second house profection, your third year in the third house, and so on. When you reach the 12th house, the cycle completes and starts again. Every 12 years, you're back at the first house. What this means is that every year of your life has a theme, a structural area of focus that the tradition identified before you were born, encoded in the sequence of houses cycling from your ascendant. Here's the full 12-year cycle mapped against your age. First house identity and beginnings ages 0, 12, 24, 36, 48, 60, 72. Second house money and possessions ages 1, 13, 25, 37, 49, 61, 73. Third house communication and learning ages 2, 14, 26, 38, 50, 62, 74. Fourth house home and family ages 3, 15, 27, 39, 51, 63, 75. Fifth house creativity and romance ages 4, 16, 28, 40, 52, 64, 76. Sixth house health and daily work ages 5, 17, 29, 41, 53, 65, 77. Seventh house relationships and partners ages 6, 18, 30, 42, 54, 66, 78. Eighth house transformation and shared resources ages 7, 19, 31, 43, 55, 67, 79. Ninth house travel and belief ages 8, 20, 32, 44, 56, 68, 80. 10th house career and reputation ages 9, 21, 33, 45, 57, 69, 81. 11th house friends and allies ages 10, 22, 34, 46, 58, 70, 82. 12th house retreat and hidden matters ages 11, 23, 35, 47, 59, 71, 83. Find your current age in that cycle. The house next to it is your current profection year, the house that's been activated since your last birthday. Now look back at a few of the ages that were significant years for you. Look at what house they correspond to. A major relationship event at 1830 or 42, 7th house profection year. Career breakthrough or crisis at 21, 33, or 45, 10th house. A year of strange withdrawal and inner work at 23, 35, or 47, 12th house. The pattern is there. It was always there. This technique just gives you the map to see it. Now here's where annual profections go from interesting to genuinely powerful. The activated house isn't just a theme. It produces a planet. The planet that rules the sign on the cusp of your perfected house becomes what traditional astrology calls the Lord of the Year. And the Lord of the Year is the single most important planet in your chart for the entire 12-month period. This is the director of the year's film. Every transit, every planetary movement, every development in your life, all of it gets filtered through this planet's lens. Events involving your Lord of the Year carry a weight that nothing else in the sky matches that year. Let me show you exactly what I mean. Say Venus is your Lord of the Year. You're in a profection year where Venus rules the activated house. Now, Venus transits your 7th house during that year. That moment is significant. It could mark the beginning of an important relationship, a significant partnership, a resolution of a long-standing relational question. It carries real weight because Venus, the planet governing it, is already the year's activated Lord. The same transit Venus transiting your 7th house in a year where Venus is not your Lord of the Year, it might be pleasant. It might bring some social ease or a nice connection, but it doesn't carry the same structural weight. It's not backed by the year's central theme. Same planet, same house, same transit. Completely different significance depending on which year you're in. This is the same principle we established in video 1 with the weather in the season. The Lord of the Year is the season. Every transit involving that planet is amplified by the fact that it's already running the year. One thing worth understanding about how RADIX uses annual profections and in traditional astrology in general is that we use the classical 7 planets only. No Uranus, no Neptune, no Pluto. This is intentional and it matters. The technique was designed and calibrated over centuries using the 7 planets that were known to ancient and medieval astrologers. Adding the modern outer planets isn't an upgrade. It's a different calculation that the tradition never tested. So the rulerships are the classical ones. Mars rules Aries and Scorpio. Venus rules Taurus and Libra. Mercury rules Gemini and Virgo. The moon rules Cancer. The sun rules Leo. Jupiter rules Sagittarius and Pisces. Saturn rules Capricorn and Aquarius. The sign on the cusp of your perfected house determines which planet becomes your Lord of the Year. And because the house cusps are different for every natal chart, the Lord of the Year is specific to you, not to your sun sign, not to your age cohort, but to your actual chart. Let's talk about what specific profection years actually feel like, because abstract principles become real the moment you recognize your own experience in them. The 12th house year is the most misunderstood profection year, and I want to spend a moment on it, because people often experience it as confusing or even alarming without understanding what's actually happening. The 12th house governs isolation, hidden matters, retreat, and things we can no longer avoid confronting. A 12th house profection year often has a distinct feeling, a pulling inward from social life. Not necessarily depression, but a kind of withdrawal, old patterns surfacing. A sense that the usual external activity isn't where the real work is happening. These years often don't look productive from the outside. They frequently look like very little is happening. But the 12th house year is doing essential underground work, clearing, processing, preparing the ground for the first house year that follows it. If you've ever had a year that felt like a strange pause, a forced slowing down, a year that didn't fit your usual narrative, there's a reasonable chance it was a 12th house profection year. The ages are 11, 23, 35, 47, 59. Check yours. The 7th house year is when relationships become the central stage, and I mean all relationships. Romantic partnerships, business alliances, significant collaborations, open conflicts, legal matters involving another party. Whatever themes have been building in your relational life tend to come forward and demand resolution in the 7th house year. Relationships that have been hovering begin or end. Partnerships that have been ambiguous clarify. And here's the important thing, it's not just the surface events that matter. It's how your natal 7th house is set up. What planet rules it? What's the condition of that planet in your chart? A 7th house year with a well-placed Venus as ruler is a very different experience than a 7th house year with a debilitated Mars as ruler. The Lord of the Year tells you a lot about the quality of what's coming, not just the theme, but the texture of it. 10th house profection years are the ones people most often look back on as the years when everything changed professionally. Career developments, public visibility, reckonings with authority, reputation shifts, the 10th house governs all of it. These are frequently the years of significant professional moves, a promotion that changes your trajectory, a public failure that forces a reinvention, a moment where your work finally reaches the audience it was meant for. They can go either direction. The 10th house is simply the domain of career and reputation. And the Lord of the Year's natal condition shapes whether the year's events are expansive or demanding. A well-placed Jupiter ruling a 10th house year and a debilitated Saturn ruling the same year are radically different situations. The pattern doesn't lie. Look back at ages 9, 21, 33, 45, 57 in your own life. What was happening professionally in those years? Now, let's connect this back to what we established in video 1. Annual profections don't replace transits. They give transits their context. This is the layered reading that traditional astrology uses, and it's what makes RADIX's analysis so much more precise than just looking at what's in the sky. Your profection year identifies the chapter's theme, the house that's activated, and the area of life in focus. The Lord of the Year identifies the planet that's running everything, and then you watch what happens to that planet in the sky throughout the year. Transits to your Lord of the Year hit harder than anything else that year. Transits through your perfected house carry the full weight of the year's activated theme. A Saturn transit to your 7th house in a 7th house perfection year, that's a seismic event. The same Saturn transit in a 3rd house year is real, but it's background. It's not the year's story. Traditional astrologers always layered these techniques in sequence. Profection sets the house. Lord of the Year identifies the planet. Transits provide the specific timing of events within that framework. Each layer makes the next one more precise. And here's something I want you to actually do not just think about, but sit down and do at some point after this video. Pull up the 12-year cycle table. Find the ages for your 7th house, 10th house, and whatever house currently has the most activated planets or significant placements in your natal chart. Look at what was happening in your life at those ages. Most people who do this exercise have a version of the same experience. The years align with the themes, not perfectly, not like a machine, but clearly enough that the pattern is undeniable. The years that were about relationships are the 7th house years. The career years are the 10th house years. The strange withdrawal years are the 12th house years. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's kind of the thing with this system. Once the framework clicks into place, you start seeing it operating everywhere in your own history. And then you can see what's coming. So, practically speaking, what do you do with this information? Here are 3 things worth applying once you know your current profection year. So, first, reframe the year's theme rather than fighting it. If you're in a 6th house year, health and daily work and health demands are dominating your life. That's not bad luck. That's the year's curriculum. We're working with the theme rather than against it. Changes your relationship to what's happening. The sixth house year that you approach consciously is a very different experience than the sixth house year. You spend wondering why everything feels like maintenance and obligation. Every house has its gifts and its demands. Knowing which house you're in lets you lean into the gifts and prepare for the demand. Second, watch your Lord of the Year in the sky throughout the year. Note when it stations retrograde that often marks a period of review or revision in the year's central themes. Note when it's aspected by other planets, especially conjunctions, oppositions, or squares from Saturn or Jupiter, which can bring significant pressure or expansion to the year's story. Note when it crosses sensitive points in your natal chart. Those moments are the year's critical windows. They're not random. They're the scenes of the chapter you're in. Third, and this is the one that tells you the most about the year's quality, assess your Lord of the Year's natal condition. Is your Lord of the Year in a sign where it has dignity, where it's strong and operating well, or is it in detriment or fall under stress, not functioning at its best? Is it aspected by Jupiter, which is protective and expansive, or is it closely aspected by Saturn, which brings demands, delays, and tests? The natal condition of your Lord of the Year shapes the entire year's texture, not just the events that happen, but how they feel. A well-placed Venus as Lord of the Year and a debilitated Venus as Lord of the Year both activate the same themes, but one feels like opportunity and ease, and the other feels like the year's lessons are arriving through friction and loss. This is the level of precision that traditional astrology offers, and it's the level RADIX calculates automatically the moment you enter your birth data in RADIX. Your current annual profection is calculated the moment you enter your birth data. You don't need to count houses or figure out which planet rules which sign. The timing tab shows you your current profection house, your Lord of the Year, and the condition of that planet in your natal chart. And once you've generated your deep natal report, the oracle can go further. You can ask it directly, what does my current profection year mean for me specifically? Which transits involving my Lord of the Year are most significant this year? What should I be paying attention to in the next few months? The oracle knows your chart, it knows your timing layer, and it can give you answers that are built on your specific situation, not generic guidance for your sun sign, but analysis grounded in your actual natal placements and the technique we've been talking about in this video. That's what makes it genuinely useful rather than just interesting. That's video 2. Annual profections, how the cycle works, what the Lord of the Year is and why it matters, and how to actually use this in your own life. In video 3, we go into Firdaria. If annual profections are the yearly chapter, Firdaria is the multi-year arc, the longer sweep of your life divided into planetary periods that can last anywhere from a few years to over a decade. It's one of the most powerful techniques in the entire tradition, and it's one that almost no modern astrology app has implemented at all. These two techniques together, Profections and Firdaria, layered on top of each other, are the core of how traditional astrology reads a life. Once you have both, the picture becomes remarkably clear. See you in video 3.